Welcome to Life on Life Terms, episode 59. It's your host, Justin, with...
And it's Kenny.
We're going to get into media in Canada, Big Brother in Canada, new amendments for hate speech in Canada, a new group called the Lifers for Life on Life's Terms, whoop, whoop. And we're going to close it out with a Christmas story. But before we get to that, we got to pay our bills with these things we called shout-outs. So Google Liam Connolly at Connolly Law. For all your Canadian will, estate, and media issues, Google Liam Connolly at Connolly Law. For all of your counseling needs such as addiction, family counseling, please Google adaras.ca. The famous Chris Suchit will be able to accommodate you through Skype or FaceTime for your mental health needs. And if you're in the Edmonton area, he would also might be able to get you a curative discharge from any DUI charge. As well, we would like to put a shout out to Modern Gravity Edmonton. If you have never floated, this is the place to float, and I'll tell you why. The thing is like a room. You just go in there and you let it all go. It's literally like floating in space. It's a great time, and their prices are well accommodated. They've even given double packages just for the Christmas time. So please go to their website and check out what their gift cards look like for your loved one spouse who may not like massages but might just want to hang out in some water and float around all day long.
Oh, and tell them that Life on Life's Term sent you.
Yeah, for sure. So that's it. Bills are paid. Let's get into media in Canada. So I know we have a lot of American listeners, so we're just going to go right into this, and I'll put it out this way. So here in Canada, we have a thing called CBC, which is basically state-run media. They get a bunch of money from the government, the federal government, and that's what basically helps them run. They don't have to really go out and get any advertisement to run. They just get government funds in order to run all of their programming.
Is that CBC and CNN?
CNN's American, CBC's Canadian.
Okay.
So CNN, I don't really know how it works in America, really, but I know here in Canada, we're increasingly seeing the government offset media's bills.
What does that mean?
So, like, if you can't cover your nut in media, basically the government will pay you. Now, the other thing that we see here in Canada is we have this thing called CRTC. So the CRTC is the Canadian Radio Television Commission. What they essentially do is they govern media.
Do not say this.
So,
say this.
To a degree, well, to a large degree, they do that. But they're also the ones who sell you your licensing for advertising. You can't advertise on the radio waves or the TV waves here in Canada unless you've paid their advertising. So who
would want to advertise on that shit anyways, man? Once it comes, it goes.
So, and I think that's one of the things that we'll get into just as I unpack what CRTC does. So what CRTC does is they give you your year license for your radio signal. Then every quarter, which is basically every 3 months, they then sell you your licensing to sell advertisement. So let's say you piss off CRTC, they can just say, well, you know what, we're not going to sign you a new licensing for advertisement, but you still have to pay us quarterly for your radio license, because they're two separate licenses. So you have one for the frequency, the radio frequency, one and a license for the advertising time. So they can literally slit your financial throat by saying you can't sell advertising, but you still have to pay us for your frequency licensing, like the radio frequency licensing.
What a crock of shit.
They can do the same thing with television, so on and so forth. So that's basically how they make media heal. Now, what this Trudeau government has come out and done, and mind you, and I want everybody to hear this, Trudeau is happy about the the Chinese communistic piece of state media, because they can turn so quickly. He likes that. He's endorsed this publicly here in Canada. What he has done, though, is he's just sent out $595 million in bursaries or money for Canadian media companies who are friendly towards the government. So basically saying those media sources that have been acknowledged in being true media will get a shot at getting some of this money that they've just put out for media companies.
But what do they have to do?
So basically literally the bursary says that they literally have to be friendly towards the government, which means they're not allowed to point a finger at the government. They're not allowed to say this. They're not allowed to say that. They're not allowed to say anything about the government and any negative acknowledgement.
Can't ask difficult questions.
Yeah, they're not allowed to do any investigative reporting about the government or the ministries, right? So here in Canada, our ministries are basically the same as that of the American departments, like Department of Corrections. We have a minister of Public Safety. Same idea, just different words, right? So yeah, we're not allowed to point a finger. So this is why it's so important in Canada to have these things like these podcasts, right? Because one, the CRTC is not able to govern us. The way how our technology infrastructure is set up is our servers are not in Canada; they're in another country, and it's literally free access to the internet. And this is how it's uploaded. And this is why we try to keep our pricing as free as we can for the listeners, right? This is why we go into advertising, and we have that little blurb at the beginning of the show about paying our bills and the shout-outs. Because if we didn't do that, we probably wouldn't be able to keep the doors open, right? So
nobody pays us, right?
Well, and that's the thing.
Except for that.
Yeah, and so I think that's one of the things with Canadian media is that they're not out there trying to get advertisement money because they don't have to. Instead, that's just the bonus.
Yeah, the government just fuels.
Because the government is paying them all. So how is that subjective reporting about the government? You can't. Like, would you ever call your boss a dick face? Behind his back you will, but not publicly.
Not to the public eye.
That's right. So that's basically what the media has become. Is they're just this thing for the government now. It's tragic.
Propaganda.
It's been like that for a long time in Canada. It's just more blunt in your face with this Trudeau government.
Sounds like communism to me.
100% it is. I mean, it's state-run media. You know, you look at Rebel Media, and sure, they've gotten a lot of issue in Canada about being racist, so on and so forth. They're just highly conservative. They are 100% independent. They do not take in any money from the government. So I'm going to make a hashtag right now, no gov money for media in Canada. Has to happen. We cannot go along this premise of the Canadian government paying for advertisement or not paying for advertisement, but what I mean to say is to scathe off the bills of media companies like Global and CBC and CTV. These are all Canadian media companies, and even if it's our American cousins down south who start pointing a finger at our advertisers, they should really start doing so. Start raising awareness about it, because here in Canada, our speech is definitely getting stifled by the government. And I think the next segue into that is talking about Big Brother in Canada. What also has happened, and this is the only reason why we're unpacking this, is because this just happened over the last month. So there's a lot that's happened in the last month of Canada. And you'll notice in Canada that they typically like to do this around Christmas time because everybody's feeling good. Okay?
Everybody's busy buying shit.
So the next one is Big Brother in Canada. Essentially what our census is allowed to do. So census in Canada is just like the American census. They count how many people and where and how much and what we're doing. But they are now allowed access right to our spending accounts in our bank. So they're allowed to get access from our banking institutions here in Canada and say, well, where is this individual actually spending their money? Like where, and how much? See, the problem is
yeah. So they can pull the information, like how many times you went to what ATM at what spot and pulled out how much money.
Cash you pulled out
when you're at the rub and tug.
That's right.
Hiding it from
and
your
then
wife.
they can start, and then they can also start linking this to like, have you gone to prison? Do you have family members in prison? Because that's what census does. Yeah. Right? They know how many people are in jail, how many people are not in jail. They know where people are, so on. I mean, your Google is already doing that. 100% it is. I mean, that's how Google sells you to advertisers, right? It's called direct advertisement.
Yeah, they pay attention to what you look at, and then
or what you're spending money on, where you were, what you were doing. Wow. Google's watching all of that.
That's why I keep getting those pop-ups of this shit that I buy right after.
Or like where you were or what you were talking about, right?
Do you ever like go to ask Google a question and you type in like the first letter of a sentence, and all of a sudden the whole sentence pops up, like it was listening.
Yeah, it was listening.
That's fucked.
For sure it was. For sure it was
Big
listening.
Brother, they're watching.
Yeah, exactly. So here in Canada, they passed that legislation. Next, so this is the next big unpack for Canada, and this is just horrible. So Canada was at the G20, and Canada subscribed to the new amendment in hate speech laws. So half the reason why we're talking about all this stuff right now is because here in Canada, we may not be able to talk about it again. Kind of why we're unpacking it and throwing it all out there now.
This is a heavy load.
It is. So this is the next new amendment for the hate speech law in Canada, is that we're no longer allowed to talk about migration in Canada. Good or bad, pro or con. You're just not allowed to talk about it.
We're not allowed to talk on the radio about the millions of people that are coming to Canada for what?
For any reason, any purpose, any of that. We're just not allowed to talk about it. You cannot talk about statistics of how many are coming. You can't talk about how many have integrated. You can't talk about how many just don't want to integrate. You can't talk about how many are on the social programs. You can't even talk about how many were entrepreneur, self-starting business immigrants that emigrated to Canada. You can't talk about that.
Why?
It's just gone.
Why?
Because they're saying that it's discriminatory against migrants through hate speech. So essentially what's going to end up happening is what it seems like is going to happen is that as we go on, we're going to see what's called economic refugees. So if, for instance, Yemen, and Yemen is a horrible place right now. There are children starving, and it's a brutal place. However, there are people who can make ashes into a phoenix. Okay? And if you allow all those business people to leave Yemen, you're done. Like, you need Yemen to have its economy return to it. And if all of the people leave Yemen, when will the economy ever turn around? It just becomes a desolate, right? I'm not saying that they shouldn't come to Canada. All I'm saying is what the Dalai Lama said, and I'll reiterate what he said, is you can leave your country, but you have to go home. He is from Tibet, and he lives in India. And he says, eventually, I have to go home. That's a reality. We can have all these migrants and all this immigration into the Western world, but eventually they have to go home. They have to, right? This is not their home. Their home is over there, and they need to make their home better, right?
Yeah.
That's the vision, I think.
Wow, I just got like a whole new perspective on it because of the Dalai Lama.
Instead of looking at it as they need to come here and we need to accept all of them, that's fine and dandy. But the reality is we're worlds apart when it comes to culture. That's a hard, cold fact.
Well, and basically Canada and its melting pot society is a fucking experiment.
But we're not a melting pot.
It's an experiment, like how they're bringing in all these different nationalities and blending them into one shit pot.
So it's
an experiment. It's never been done before in any other country. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the long-term effects are. We
have seen this in Canada before. So when we saw it, what it spawned was a thing called the FLQ. We saw it in 1970, and this is where Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's father, put out the War Measures Act, which was basically martial law in Canada for Quebec, and the military could shoot you if you came out of your house past curfew. It was dead on sight. That's what it was called. So what happened was we had a bunch of refugees that came in from Haiti into Canada in the 1960s, 1970s. Quebec people who are very, very nationalistic. I mean, they don't even say, I'm French from France. They say, I'm a Quebecer, right? Just like I do. They literally identify with a province in Canada. You ask anybody else, just to give a perspective, you ask anybody else in Canada from Alberta, Ontario, Saskatchewan, it doesn't matter. What are you? They're not going to say I'm an Albertan, or they're not going to say I'm an Ontarian. They're going to say I'm Italian and I'm French and I'm this and I'm that and I'm whatever. That's what we call the tossed salad. Right? That's why we say it's like a salad. A bunch of shit that's all together, but they still identify to their emigrated roots, where they came from. They're not identifying as, I'm a Canadian. Like an American, you ask an American, what are you? I'm American. And then they might go into, I'm also Irish and Italian and all these things. But for first and foremost, they're American, right? In Canada, we don't see that unless you talk to a Quebecer. You talk to a Quebecer, they won't say I'm French. They'll say I'm a Quebecer. Flat out. Nothing else but that. I'm a Quebecer, right? So now all of a sudden we had a bunch of Haitians that came into Quebec with a very nationalistic geographical area. And then what ended up happening was that people got upset and there was cultural distress, so to say, and that spawned the FLQ. And then the FLQ started taking people hostage. They killed a bunch of people. I mean, if you haven't looked into the FLQ ever in Canada, you need to look into that, because this whole speech stuff is pretty serious. I was talking to you yesterday after our float, and we'll get into the float too, where I said, if we are not allowed to talk about these issues openly, how do we know where it's going? How do we know that it's coming to a boiling point? How do we know these things? We don't. It'll be just like prison. You can't say anything, and next thing you know, some guy's hitting another guy because you're not allowed to talk, right? You don't tell somebody that you're coming for them. And why wouldn't you do that? Because it's a surprise attack. But now the government is making it to a point where just don't talk about it. So if we just don't talk about it, what you're going to see is a physical backlash, because there is no way of airing your woes, so to say. And it's going to boil very, very quickly.
Civil war.
Well, and then the other thing is when somebody's talking, you can see how they're becoming more passionate. You can see how I wouldn't even say the word passion, but it's accelerating, right? You can see their emotion accelerating. And when you see that acceleration, you can de-escalate, right? If somebody just walks up to somebody and starts hitting them, where's the de-escalation in that? There is none.
No.
I mean, you're hitting them. But when somebody's talking, at least you know where the acceleration is happening. Where is it coming from? What's going on? And then you can intervene and say, well, maybe I'll give you a different perspective. Like this immigration thing when I said this. The Dalai Lama said, well, you all have to go home at some point. This isn't your home. You need to go home. Right? It's nice to be away, but you have to go home. Right? So and that's the same, I think that's the same perspective when you're looking at, I think it's the same perspective when you're looking at Canada and allowing people to talk. You have to be able to talk in order to have perspectives change. And if you just say, no, you're not allowed to talk about it, all you're going to fester is ignorance. That's all you're going to fester. Because then there is no dialogue from this person to the other person or whatever.
Sounds like Nazism.
Well, the Liberal Party in Canada was based off of fascism. For sure it was. If you look at Justin Trudeau's dad, Elliott Trudeau, where he actually comes from, he's a fascist. 100% he is. And he used to say it openly in his two 8-year terms as Prime Minister of Canada. He is not the best Prime Minister of Canada. One of the worst. One of the worst. Some of the stuff that he put in, Quebecers don't even appreciate the language laws that he put in. And he was the person who put in language laws. This is why in Canada we have to have everything in French in Canada. That's Trudeau's dad. That's Justin Trudeau's dad who did that. We never had that issue before. You know? Quebec identity is in Quebec. And sure, it can be everywhere in Canada. However, the Western alienation is real because of that. You know, it's horrible. Canada is becoming a place that is very fascist, and it's very much a big brother state where the government is watching everything that we do. Right? Like it's a different world, and the only, like, here on this show we don't really get into politics very much. Recently we have been, but I think that these are extenuating circumstances right now.
Well, that's why the Google Chrome logo resembles either a camera or an eyeball. Or if you look closely at the lines in the Google Chrome symbol and you follow the lines, there's 3 6s.
Oh, yeah.
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 Mark of the beast.
I mean, I don't I don't like to go into that this is the end of the world piece, because I like to keep my environment friendly, as opposed to living in an environment with adversaries, or violence or whatever. But these are glaring things that are happening in Canada that need to be discussed. And if you and I, even as powerful as our mics are because of our listeners, who we truly appreciate, you guys got to start talking about it. Because eventually the avenues that are going to happen is, I foresee the CRTC coming to try to close podcasts as well.
Well, what needs to happen is our listeners start up your own podcasts.
Yes.
Link with us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We'll have like a partnership that isn't really written, but just, mutually beneficial. We'll help each other out. We'll share the same topics.
And if you guys need to get set up with mics, so on and so forth, I mean, all you have to do is hit Justin at lifeonlifestermspodcast.com, and I'll show you. Like, it does not take much. It's like $1,800 worth of equipment, and you're in the podcasting game. It doesn't take a whole hell of a lot. More shows are better. This is a business model where if there's more friends, there's more listeners. That's just the way it is. If you look at anybody who has any clout in the podcasting world down in America, they're all friends. They all talk to each other, and we're in the same boat. We
got to share each other's shit.
Mm-hmm.
If you have valuable stuff that people need to hear, it needs to be shared.
Well, and I think, and like I said, this media thing in Canada with the $600 million coming out, I would strongly, and I think we're going to put this up on the Facebook page. We need to start boycotting Global, CBC, all of those channels, because those channels, especially TV media, they're the ones who are taking that money.
And they're fucking feeding out misinformation.
Yeah.
Like keeping people in an ignorant state.
Yeah, it's the rhetoric of the government. And it doesn't matter if it's liberal or conservative. I'm telling you right now, I'm not a conservative and I'm not a liberal. I'm a libertarian. I believe in small government. And I believe in our God-given rights, so to say. You know what I mean? I believe that we should be free. We should be able to express however we want to express. Here in Canada, we do not have free speech. We've talked about freedom of expression many, many times on this show, and that is starting to be seriously, seriously infringed when you have a law or an amendment of migration hate speech, where it literally says you are not allowed to talk about migration. The Prime Minister here in Canada has said things like, "Oh, it's only a UN clause. We don't necessarily have to have that in Canada," so on and so forth. No, we do. You and I have actually used UN law to get out of jail, whether you realize it or not. I'm not kidding you.
Charter of Rights issues. No,
past Charter of Rights. So one of the things is it's inhumane to keep somebody in jail without trial or waiting for trial past 9-10 months. That came from the UN.
I thought it was 18 months.
No, 9 or 10 months. That's when you first pitch. But when it's 18 months, it makes the government even worse.
Yeah, then you're out of jail.
Then the other thing is the UN has also dictated by human rights violations, so on and so forth. Nobody can be in the hole for longer than 72 hours. The hole being segregation segregation time. So you're away from everybody. You're locked up 23/7, 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's the UN. So if you go to court saying I was locked up in segregation for 7 days and the guards screw up and they show that you were actually in there for 7 days, you're out, son. And you can actually file for a lawsuit for human rights violations against the Canadian Public Safety Ministry. Yeah, we've all used it. So to say that the UN cannot dictate a migration hate speech law, bullshit. It's bullshit. A lawyer can cite whatever they want to cite that our society deems to be appropriate for our society as a defense in court. It can come from America. It can come from Britain. It can come from wherever of a Western society that a judge is allowed to use as a perspective, being a judge. Should I allow this to be entertained in my courtroom or not? There's the precedents of America, and then there's the precedents of Canada, and then there's the precedents of other countries that are still Western civilizations. This is why we are so closely we're so close cousins to each other societally. That's one of the reasons. So it's kind of amazing. Like I said, it's kind of amazing to see this idiot Justin Trudeau say something like, oh, well, it's not going to dictate anything in our society. It's a bunch of bullshit. I mean, there was one time actually on Twitter, I'll say this. There's one time on Twitter where he was talking about inclusivity. And I said, you know what would be inclusive? Is if you allowed an Aboriginal man to sleep with your wife. I said, the most liberal thing you could do is sit in the closet and watch.
Holy fuck.
So, Justin, if you're listening,
that was for you.
I kind of want to change my first name. All because of you, my friend. All because of you. So, now that, if there's any questions,
hit us up.
Yeah, because I'm afraid that after this episode, we may only be able to talk about this through written language. I'm not sure if we'll be able to actually talk about it over the airwaves.
That's
right?
what blogging is for, though.
That's right, because it's your opinion and it's freedom of expression to a degree. Now, let's talk about the lifers. So you and I went for this float. How was the float?
Oh my fucking God. It connected me. It recentered me. It balanced me. I was able to do creative visualization exercises while I was in there so vividly and clearly that I know this shit is going to manifest quick.
Let me ask you this. How were you feeling before walking in? Because you never floated prior to this, right? So what were the feelings walking into this thing?
Well, one, I was dragging my ass because we didn't have any coffee.
Yeah.
Because you're not supposed to have any stimulants prior to a float, and that makes sense because then it would be harder to get into a relaxed meditative state, right? But I was a little scared or anxious or nervous because it was a new experience and I didn't know what to expect. And I never checked these guys out online. I just went in there blind because I wanted to be raw experience. Yeah. And I was blown away when I got there, and walked in and seen how nice it was, and when I seen the rooms and the tanks and or it's not even a tank, it's a huge bathtub with a freaking 8-foot ceiling or higher, and then there's little starlights in the roof, and it was majestic. And when I got in there and I couldn't touch the bottom with my ass of this 2-foot deep water.
Was it 2 feet or was it a foot? I can't remember. I think it was
maybe a foot and a half. Maybe
something like that. Yeah, 16 inches or 18 inches or something.
Yeah. And I've never felt that weightlessness, that zero gravity, that
yeah, man.
Oh, it was.
Did you feel your body tense up in the first little bit because you didn't really trust it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know really what to do, but then you just totally relax and just let go of everything. Yeah. And to feel the decompression of my spine as it elongated in this, and there was no tension left. There was you really figure out where all the physical stress is in your body.
One of the ones that I had saw really quick was my mouth.
Yeah.
My mouth was so tense. And it was really cool to finally feel my mouth just fully relax, Yeah. And again, so you use the halo for the head.
Yeah, it's kind of like a hemorrhoid ring.
For your head.
But
then you got rid of it.
And then I used it again.
Yeah, I got rid of it entirely. And I had the water close to my eyes even.
Yeah.
I loved it. I felt like I was... And do you notice that after a while, you don't know what part of your body is out of water and what part of your body is in water? Did you notice that?
Yes. I went back and forth where I would notice it for a little while, then it would then I would lose track of where I was in the tank, basically in comparison to the water.
You could be an inch away from the wall and you feel like a mile, right? You have no idea. If you can keep your eyes closed for the entire time, you have no idea where you are in that tank.
Yeah, like I literally felt like I was a spaceman in like a spaceship floating around in this capsule with no gravity, like from touching one wall and then floating across to the other wall. And it felt like, I was probably the tips of my fingers were probably inches away from the wall because I had my hands like outstretched above my head like a Y, basically.
Yeah.
And the time it took for me to touch one wall, then float over the other wall, it felt like it was a football field distance away. Like I was just floating through space.
I liked the bubbles a little bit, so I would move.
Every time I farted.
Oh, so are you going back?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Modern Gravity. If you're in the Edmonton area, Modern Gravity is great friends of ours. They were amazing. The hostess, the person at the front desk, Destiny, she was 100% awesome.
She's cool.
Yeah, she got his tea afterwards. It was an
so
awesome
cool.
experience. So I'm gonna just talk about some of the stuff that I came to. So this was my third time floating. I still had the muscle stuff that you had gone through in the beginning, where I didn't trust it. I was like, "Fuck this." But the difference is from where I used to float to this place, where I'm sold on now. I actually went into like a tank, like it wasn't a room. Like it felt almost. It was, if you could think of like a rice. It was like the top end of the rice opened up, you went into it, and then the top end of the rice came over you and locked you in almost.
It's kind of like a pot that you cook ham in.
Yeah, very similar to that. Yeah. So anyways, that's what I was in. I didn't like that experience. I found that it was very, very claustrophobic. This experience was better, but these are the things that I came out of that experience. I'm going to devote more time to this podcast, and I'm going to devote more time to the blog. I think it demands more of my time. I think that the listeners deserve more of my time.
Yeah,
you guys have been amazing. You've given us tons and tons of positive feedback, whether it be on the Facebook or on the website. I know you guys I can see my analytics. You guys are definitely rating the blogs, and yeah, so I appreciate that very much. And it's time for myself to step it up and do a little bit more of my part. And then it was the whole lifers concept. You and I before had talked about the lifers, and we were going to change themes from Pride-O-Maniacs or the Pride members to lifers next season. However, you and I also discussed about getting some more bloggers.
Yes.
So that's where we're at.
We're building the family.
and we also need more content creators. So one of the things that we thought that we would do for the listeners and for the people who are reading the blog is it would be nice for the bloggers or new content creators to introduce themselves via the blog. So these lifers that were the group, the lifers, these obviously comes from a term from jail, right?
So we're lifers.
Yeah, we're lifers. We're also Pride members.
Yeah.
And so will lifers. Lifers will also be Pride members. But essentially what they are is they're bloggers. So they're going to blog about 2 shows every month. And that perspective is also going to be out there. And Kenny and I might touch on some of that, or probably will touch on some of that throughout the airwaves.
Yeah.
So we're going to be referencing those blogs. So it'll be very, very important for you guys as the listeners to go to that website, become a Pride member, sign your email up to it, and then you'll see these blogs, because these are essentially the afterthoughts. And you guys, as Pride members, will also be able to talk about those blogs. You'll be able to comment, so on and so forth, provided that you've given us your email. If you've given us your email, you're a full-blown Pride member, and that's as easy as it is, and that's as free as it is.
Your opinion has weight.
Yeah, like you cannot comment unless you've given us your email. So that's the extra access that you get as a Pride member, and it's literally, like I said, it's free. It costs you nothing. Before, we were trying to sell subscriptions. We didn't abandon the idea because we weren't selling them. We abandoned the idea because we don't feel it's fair that the listeners should pay.
No, it should be free always.
I think that, and we came to that realization before. So
our 5th episode together.
Yeah. So this lifers piece, I'm really excited about it. We already have at least one girl maybe a couple people.
Maybe a couple people.
Maybe a couple people.
I think we got a couple
who are going to be contributing their words about the episodes that we do. And if there's anybody, it doesn't matter if you're in Canada or America. All you have to do is write 3 blogs, send it to Justin at lifeonlifestermspodcast.com
or Kenny at lifeonlifestermspodcast.com.
And then all you got to, and then we'll evaluate it. We'll look at it, and then what we'll do is we'll actually give you a full access to the blog piece, so you can actually write in our blog space
right on the website.
Yeah,
and you guys, the bloggers, the lifers, will get access to the show prior to it being released.
Yeah.
So that they can give their perspective on it and have it released the same time that ours is released.
Yeah. And and as well, we may try to get in some fringe benefits for you guys. So, like,
maybe media passes with us to special events.
Yeah, stuff like that. You can also, we'll work out whatever we can work out, right? And then, of course,
it's going to be based on circumstance and demographic.
Yeah, whatever we can do. If you want to go to a certain thing, we can always apply for a media pass and try to get you in.
Even abroad.
Yeah, like wherever it is. Abroad? You want a media pass for abroad? You can just go to the massage.
That's misogynistic.
You can just go to the massage parlor.
Don't throw me in that bucket.
What the fuck? Anyways.
We have a massage parlor like a block away.
From the studio.
There's some interesting characters out there all the time.
So yeah, I think I'm stoked about this Lifers thing. We're going to keep pumping it, and we're just going to keep on trying to get more of these Lifers. I think this year alone we could handle 4 more, like 4 in total, I should say.
No, I want to say something too about like potential sponsors and like people. If you're interested in like advertising for something, I just want to let you know, like we talked about this earlier, and when it's on TV or it's on the radio, it comes and it goes and it's gone.
Yeah.
When it's on a podcast, it's online forever.
Well, and this is the thing, as opposed to the selling feature, I think the other thing is, and you and I said this too before the show, is that we will not sell anything that we don't endorse personally.
Yeah.
And I don't even mean selling. Literally, us talking about the float, we're only talking about the float
because we did it and we fucking
and
love
it's
it.
Amazing, right? This Chris Suchit guy. Why are we talking about Chris Suchit as a counselor? He's been on the show twice. He's an amazing guy. He's really good at his job, and he has 44 years in the counseling field, in this mental health and addiction piece. Not many people make it to 44 years. So in a field of 4 to 5 year burnout period, like this guy is really good, and you can reference those shows and kind of get a feel for his counseling style even. And then why do we talk about Liam? Liam's just a fantastic guy, and he's an awesome lawyer. He's been really good to us.
He's already saved our ass
a couple times. You know what I mean? So like, why are we endorsing these people? It's not because they're paying us. It's because, essentially we are getting paid for it at the end of the day. But the biggest piece to it is that
it's valuable.
We like these guys. These guys have a personal relationship with us, and if we have a personal relationship with them, you guys being the Pride members should be afforded the same personal how would I say that? The same personal kind of relationship with these people that we have as well.
You get to reap
right?
the benefits as well.
Yeah, I think it's all encompassing, and we have some other sponsors that are coming up next year that are going to be just out of this world. Like it's crazy. And if you're out there as a sponsor, you're looking to have an online presence, check us out at Life on Life's Terms. And if you like how we've presented this show and the blog online, get in contact with us and we'll figure something out.
And the best thing is online sales or companies that are all throughout North America or
whatever it is that you're selling, we'll entertain it. And if we like it, we'll give a shout out on the show.
Yeah.
We
just want to try it.
So let's get to a Christmas story. So this is going to be the Christmas story that we're going to talk about jail, just to get it out of the way. And then the next one we'll probably do something like in our younger years.
Okay.
And then we'll do something. The last one we'll do that's in the positivity of recovery or the world that we live in now.
I have a good jail Christmas story.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I've spent numerous Christmases in jail.
Yeah.
And I've had some really shitty, lonely ones, and it sucks.
Yeah.
Talking to your kids, oh, what did you get from Santa? And you just feel like a bag of deep fried dicks because you're not there. But there was one memorable one where at the time everybody was really happy, and this was in the old Remand Center on a gang unit. We were on 4C. It's right across from 4B. It was kind of like the zoo, so it was like a mixture of high-profile people in there. And I was celled up with my late friend, Jamie. I miss that guy. I love you, bro. But he told I was shaking it rough, and shaking it rough is that term where you're sitting there, you're depressed, and you can't stop thinking about all the shit that you're missing.
Yeah.
Right? And he says, "Don't worry, bro. It's gonna get better." And I'm like, how is it going to get better, man? I'm not there with my family. He's like, the guards are going to bring us a package this year. You just wait. It's going to happen.
What's a package?
So a package is narcotics in jail, and this package gets hidden and toted around.
In what?
Well, most of the time, assholes.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's called your jail wallet.
Yeah.
Or a suitcase.
Yeah.
You stick it up your ass.
Yeah.
Anyways, well, now they have body scanners, so I don't know how that's going to work. And I've never experienced these body scanners in the New Edmonton Remand Center. But so we're waiting for, a new guy came on the unit. It's Christmas Eve, and nobody ever comes on the unit Christmas Eve. It's weird. And we thought that this guy had drugs or whatever, and we were just anticipating this Christmas package that was going to show up. But all of a sudden, the guards come on. They have this envelope in their hand, and they call this guy to the bubble. And this little,
What's the bubble?
The bubble is, where the guards sit behind that separates them from the population in jail.
Yeah.
It's they used to have, a protective shield of, bulletproof glass around them that you couldn't smash with anything.
So it wasn't the open concept that it is today?
No, it wasn't. No. And this fish... Okay, a fish goes up to get this envelope that the guard was giving me, and a fish is like a new guy in jail, and you get him to do all the stupid shit or the high-risk shit because he's a fish. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's got gills. And he grabs his envelope, and he runs back, and then as he walks by, the guard wasn't looking, he slipped it under our cell door. And it was about 1.25 inches or 1.5 inches thick stack of papers. And it was a disclosure package, okay? And the guards bring this disclosure package into the jail. Well, little did they know that the center of the disclosure package it was carved out. And for about 80 sheets in this 100-something stack of sheets of paper of a disclosure package.
Oh my God.
And it was packed full of drugs and ecstasy and weed and cigarettes. Or no, there was no cigarettes. There was nicotine patches.
Oh my God.
Which in jail that you smoke.
Yeah.
You smoke nicotine patches in jail.
Yeah.
You want to fucking OD on nicotine? That's the way.
Yeah.
And the guards bring it to us. Thanks, guys. So I'm totally ratting out a good ploy, a good racket, right?
Yeah.
But they're onto this shit now. This was several years ago.
Yeah.
But all the names in the disclosure package were whited out. And the drugs were right in the middle of the paper. So if they were to grab the corner and flip through it to make sure that all the papers weren't stuck together or anything, they weren't. And it looked really good.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then we all had a rave. We had a disco. Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah. And then felt really shitty Boxing Day.
I bet. You guys went through it at one night?
Oh, well, a few.
How many were on it?
How many ecstasy tablets?
Well, how many people were using it?
Oh, we probably
was it the entire unit?
No, probably 25, 30 people.
So like half the unit.
Yeah, half the unit. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good Christmas.
I just thought it was good because the guards bring it to us.
Yeah, I mean that
It's like, here you
feels.
go.
It kind of feels like Santa's real, right? Did you ever call the guard Rudolph after?
No.
I totally would have did that. Like, your name is Rudolph, and he would have never known why.
They were wondering, like, it was the whole unit was dry, and then all of a sudden Christmas Eve it just lights up, and like everybody's smoking weed and like got their disco lights on.
Well, and that was the thing too. Like, I've been in that facility. That was the thing too. You barely got outside.
No,
Barely.
yeah. In the wintertime, like once, maybe twice a week if you're lucky, but usually once a week. Sometimes you'd go weeks without it.
Yeah. It was yeah, that was not a good place. I mean, you're talking about a place that the SPCA wouldn't even take, because
The what's
SPCA is like our humane society for dogs. They wouldn't even take. So the province, Alberta province, was going to sell it to them for $1, and they wouldn't take it because it was inhumane for animals. And they still had people in that building. That's no joke. That was literally in the newspaper.
Yeah.
That was in the newspaper actually when I was in there.
Yeah.
I remember when that had happened. I was like, oh my God, how in the hell do they have people in here when they won't even put friggin' animals in here? Like, what the hell is this, right?
Yeah.
Christmas in jail. I don't have a good story. I have just a shitty story about Christmas in jail. I was alone. No family was picking up their phones, basically. We had the chaplain come in. The Catholic chaplain came in with a bunch of people, and that was and they give out like a care package.
Oh, a bag of candy that some 5-year-old kid
Yeah.
in elementary painted and colored on it for you and
Yeah.
wrote you a little message. Like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You're a good person.
Yeah.
And that's what's written on your Christmas package that a 5-year-old made you, and that's the only Christmas present you get all Christmas. You
Yeah.
feel like a fucking goof.
Yeah. So that's
It's
what
not good.
I actually felt good when I got the bags. It's like, oh, somebody cares about me. I guess I don't have to tear a bed sheet and hang myself tonight. Like that's kind of where I was at for that. Again, I was shaking and rough. It was pretty, and I was single celled. So single celled is a benefit, and sometimes it's not a benefit. You know, if you're in that mental place, it can be pretty tough. So that was my last Christmas in jail was done sober. It was the first one ever done sober.
Yeah, my last one was.
But
definitely
I'll
sober.
say this. So I actually did a 7-day fast over Christmas. I gave away all of my meals, and this is a miracle. So I gave away all my meals. Well, mind you, people kind of knew who I was in that place too. So I gave away all my meals, and I got them all back. Like after, like, you know what I mean? Nobody was walking up to me trying to be like, give me your tray. You know, that didn't happen after I was done my fast.
Give me your cornbread.
Yeah, basically it didn't happen. And then the other thing is the guards didn't really give me any bullshit for doing a fast, because they'll usually say, well, you need a psych eval because you're going crazy.
Yeah.
So that didn't happen. But this is the craziest thing. So like, just to talk about jail itself, you never know when things are going to happen. They never tell you the schedule, because then it's less likely that you're going to break out or whatever. Like the guards basically treat all the inmates like mushrooms. They feed them shit and keep them in the dark. Literally is what it is, right? So here I was doing this fast, and I asked the chaplain, the Catholic chaplain, in the Catholic faith, we get like a Eucharist, or like the bread of Christ, for midnight mass. So that's midnight from like Christmas Eve into Christmas. And I hadn't had mass like that, or a Eucharist, in years before this time. So here I was going through the fast, and when did she come in? She came in. So Boxing Day was my 7th day on my fast, and I was calling it quits that day. She came in the afternoon on that day to give me my Eucharist for mass, and I had no idea that it was coming in. So literally,
It worked out perfect.
that was the first thing I ate for me to end the fast. Was that. Gave up Christmas meal, like all that in jail.
Yeah.
And that was the first meal I got was the wafer, so to say. That afternoon, the next day.
You just
worked
perfect.
Just worked out that way. God or odd, call it whatever you want. that's how it broke down. So that was I had a lot of those God shots when I was in jail the last time. A lot of God shots like that. So this was one of many.
I used to test it, and I'd be like, okay, if you're real, show me a sign. And like I would make these call outs for help or something, like in like really stressful periods, like when you're getting transferred from jail to jail, and like you don't know what you're walking into. You have no fucking idea if unit, what gang unit you're going on to, or who your roommate's gonna be, or anything like that. And I fucking go into this cell, and there's this thing on there, and there's this pamphlet on the table, and it had this question on it, and I can't quote it right now because it was years ago, but it was directly related to an experience that I had that day, and I was like, bam, gotcha, you're fucking real. I test it all the time.
I think that happens quite a bit, especially for people in jail. I think you're just more open to it because you're really at an epitome in your life where
you'll take anything.
And I think the other thing is too, especially us talking about this Christmas in jail, it's one of these things where you reflect on it, and it's like, I never ever want to go back to that again, and we've all said it, even in active addiction, we've all said when we got out of jail, these are the things I never want to go back to again. However, here we were going back to jail again. And then when you're in jail, you go, oh, Jesus Christ, I really hope I am not here for fucking Christmas. I really hope I'm not, or I'm not here for my birthday, or I'm not here for
the next 8 years,
whatever it is, right? That's what you're saying. But now, because I think, let me go back a little bit. I think we underappreciated the work that it was going to take to reform. I think that's what we were doing, was we were underappreciating that it was going to take what it took in order for us not to go back to jail. And so it's one of these things when I pay homage coming Christmas, I drive by the jail. I can't go in, but I drive by to see it so that I remember where I don't want to be, because those guys in there really doing time that day.
Yeah, they're feeling pain.
That is doing time. It's not about the guards dumping your phone calls, like dropping all your phone calls. It's not about the guards locking you up. It's not about the guards doing this or the guards doing that. It's about sitting there Christmas Eve knowing you can't go home. You just can't go home. Eventually you will. But right there in that moment, the day that you want to say, I'm ready to leave, I'm ready to go,
the joke's over, I'm sorry,
you're not going home, man. This is where the real men are now. This is where you're going to get real close to that piece of your mind you never ever wanted to go and see. That's when you sit in the dark.
That's what I got from the float, is like that ability. Like, so we went for a float. Sorry, I'm going back to this right now. We went for a float for an hour and a half. Normally it's just an hour.
Yeah. But let me set up the premise. The reason why I wanted to do the hour and a half is because I knew it was your first time, and I knew that it takes a little while to get to that place, right? So that's why we got it.
Okay. Well, like the first, I'd say like 50 minutes. It took me to like accept my surroundings and let go of everything.
Yeah.
And the last 40 minutes, I was in there, like I was in and out of this universe. I was on different dimensions. I was having different experiences.
Yeah.
And when it ended, they started playing this music that like wakes you up out of this fucking trance you put yourself in. And I had this feeling like, shit, I don't want it to be over right now. I want to stay here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's in those depths of our mind that I was able to go the other day at the float because of those times in jail. When we're sitting in solitude on fucking Christmas, shaking it rough, depressed, thinking about all this shit. And in those times, we had to go to a different place in our mind to escape from it.
Yeah.
And it's like that same place of pure bliss and peacefulness that I went to in the float.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think that's what makes, what jail is what makes a person not a mental midget. you know? And I think probably somebody is going to get upset with that word, but I'm okay with it.
Well, I'm pretty short, so.
I mean, it's one of those things where jail will do that for you. If you don't get physically fit, you're definitely going to become mentally fit. And if you really want to know the reason of recidivism, it's because really you went through a brainwashing in jail.
Well, you know what? Well, yeah, that's the reason for recidivism, is because when you're in there, you're subject to your environment, and everything just impresses on your subconscious mind, and it fucking changes and it creates new shitty belief systems.
Well, and the other thing that we grossly underappreciate is the guy that's sitting there Christmas Eve. That's doing time. That's going to be impressionable upon that person for a very long amount of time of his life.
So what are they thinking about at those times?
And so if we as a society actually recognize that those are the times when somebody's doing time, and we use Christmas as a microism because everybody enjoys Christmas, but there's your mother's birthday, there's your wife's birthday, there's your kid's birthday, there's your dad's birthday, there's your brother's birthday, there's your sister's birthday, there's your birthday. And those are just birthdays, right? Then there's
Easter and Valentine's Day and Thanksgiving.
All of that stuff, right? That's doing time. Or the fact that you only have 10 minutes to talk to your entire family. Your son, your daughter, your wife, your mother. That's all you have is 10, 15 minutes. That's it. And then that phone call's gone, right? So, I mean, using Christmas is a nice example for people who've never been in that situation to kind of see the perspective of what doing time is. That's punishment. There's no need to say they don't need TVs. There's no need to say they don't need books. There's no need to say they don't need this, they don't need that. No. Being in that place is punishment enough.
Yeah.
Just that place is punishment enough.
Being taken away from your kids on Christmas.
It's
punishment.
It's tough.
Yeah.
That's enough punishment. You don't have to inflict more upon somebody, right?
When you start inflicting more punishment than that, that's when you start having negative psychological effects on these people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it, right? So, that's the hour. Let's wrap it up.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. I just want to let you know that Justin and I are taking a little holiday over the Christmas. So December 21st, our last show will be aired.
For this season.
For this season.
Yeah.
And that is with the little person who is also a stripper. Is that episode?
No, it'll be that week.
Oh, okay.
Ours will be the last one of that week.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay. So, and then we will be back January 3rd.
Yeah, January 3rd will be the first show of season 2.
Season 2, Life on Life's Terms.
But it'll be like episode, 60-something.
So please subscribe and share to all your friends. You can find our afterthoughts of each show on our blog, on our website at www.lifeonlifestermspodcast.com. Become a Pride member as soon as you can by dropping your email to us. And we love you.
We're looking for lifers.
We love you. Merry Christmas.
Have a beautiful afternoon.
Bye, guys.